Welcome to another edition of Weight Loss Fight Club, brought to you by fightweightgain.com, a service of Breakthrough Medical. I'm Rustin Gibbs. Today I'm going to be speaking with Olivia Gibbs. Olivia and I and Charilyn, who you saw in a previous episode, are actually partnered on a company called Breakthrough Medical, and we focus on weight loss solutions. Today, Olivia is going to ask me questions about my personal story. Last week, we learned about the story from Lo, who is someone that we met at the nail salon, and she had a very successful weight loss story. And so today we're going to continue that series of interviewing people about their fight with weight gain. And today I'm the person that's going to be under the microscope. I actually have a weight loss journey myself, and I've invited Olivia here to help me talk through that together. So with that, why don't we get started?
Okay, so my first question is, how did you get into weight loss?
So I have never thought of myself as needing weight loss my whole life. When I was, I've always been I'm only 5'6". Maybe I shouldn't tell the whole internet that. Tom Cruise is 5'6", by the way.
If anyone asks, he's actually 6'2".
That's right. Because on screen, you think Tom Cruise is this big, Hollywood actor or whatever. He's only 5'6", Anyway, so I'm not a very tall person. I'm not a very big person. So my whole life, I've never really been heavy or overweight. I've never thought of myself like that. But when I turned about 38, I guess, I kind of noticed a change in my body. I think that's pretty normal, and you won't know this until you're older. But, when I was younger, I was pretty athletic. I was pretty active. Never really thought I had a weight issue. But then when I got into my late 30s, I noticed that my body kind of slowed down. I work in the IT industry. I have a computer job, a desk job. I used to go play soccer all the time to make sure I was getting, my exercise in every day. And but then when I got in my late 30s, I just started to slow down. It was a lot harder to keep up on the soccer field. I just felt like it was harder to stay fit and active. And I've never really had a bad diet. I don't think I've had I'm not I've never been addicted to candy or sugar. I know some people talk about that. I've never really had that. Well, the one thing I do remember, everyone has this story, right? Like when you're 10 years old and you go trick-or-treating and you get in our day, you have a pillowcase full of candy. And then for some reason you think to yourself, you have to eat that whole pillowcase worth of candy in a week, right? And so I have those kind of experiences, but I've never really been addicted to, I never thought I was addicted to sugar or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I thought I had a pretty good diet. I didn't think that I was eating a lot of junk food or anything like that. But then back to the question, when did I notice a weight issue? In my late 30s, I just started slowing down, working a desk job, just started to put on weight. And at 5'6", I should probably weigh, 160, 170 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
And at that time in my life, I got up to 200 pounds. And that doesn't maybe sound like a lot, because there are other people that are taller, bigger people. So 200 pounds wouldn't look bad on them. But on me, I thought it looked really bad. Some of the weight gain was related to stress. I think you were pretty young at the time. But around that time, Charilyn and I were having some difficulties in our marriage. We were talking pretty seriously about divorce. We were separated and so forth.
Yeah.
And so I call it the divorce diet. I think people that have been divorced maybe know what I'm talking about, but you're just so stressed out, you don't eat,
Yeah.
And so I ended up at that time, that was about, I'm trying to think how long ago that was. It must have been about 12 years ago. I didn't eat very much. I decided to cut sugar out of my diet, to be very intentional about it. And so I lost 30 pounds at that time. And again, I call it the divorce diet. It was sort of a combination of a lot of stress, didn't eat.
Yeah.
And then I also added that I, cut out sugar. I also did a lot of walking at that time. I think I was walking more than 5 miles a day, something like that. And so I lost 30 pounds. And I'm going to come back to that later of why that's important. I think it's related to the sugar, if I think about it, right? Because I wasn't exercising more or less than I normally did. You could maybe say that the stress of the divorce was a factor. But I think the real big difference was I just was I cut sugar out of my diet. So I got back down to like well, honestly, I think at that time I got down to like 158.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? So I lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And felt really good. So what happened then is we did not get divorced. We got back together,
Surprise.
right? Yeah, we're together. And then life just kind of got back to normal again. It just started, going to work, kind of got back to eating cookies and crackers and just, stuff. I didn't think it was like really bad or anything, but just kind of got back to a normal kind of diet. And then over time, I gained all that weight back. So about 10 years went by. And then I think it was about 7 months, well, maybe more, maybe it was a year ago. I look in the mirror and I'm just like, I look old, I feel old. I just don't feel very energetic. At this point, I'm 50 years old. I stopped exercising. I still like soccer, but it was like, I remember that you might remember this, we did a sports day with your cousins and down in Spanish Fork. And we went down there and it was a sports day, right? So you got a bunch of kids throwing frisbees and running around.
Yeah.
And I just remember the kids running circles around me. You know what I mean? It's like I could not keep up with anybody. I had a big beach ball belly. Why are you laughing?
That was a funny analogy.
Well, it was a big round and kind of a hard belly, and we can talk about that too, but it was like this big, I never really looked at myself and thought, I never thought I'm obese or anything like that,
Yeah.
But I did have like this pot belly. I think it was pretty common for men. And I was trying to run up and down the field with the kids, and I was so winded and I couldn't keep up. And it was like painful, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think around that time, I thought to myself, I've got to do something different. I just didn't feel like I had the energy or the zest for life. I didn't look good, didn't feel good. I think at that time in my life, it was hard to bend over and tie my shoes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like walking up, I'd have to like pause halfway up the stairs. You know what I mean? Okay.
No, was that bad? I'm just kidding.
Well, it's funny you say that because we kind of joke about it. But I do think we don't realize that obesity changes people's lives for the worse, like in every way. Like your clothes stop fitting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Simple things like tying your shoes and walking up the stairs become difficult. And you're young, and so you might not relate yet, but it's like you get older, and it's like you start to realize I'm getting sick.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I thought to myself I was dying or anything like that, but you just sort of realize I'm slowing down. I'm coming to the end of my life, but I'm only 50 years old. It shouldn't be like this. You know what I mean? You might remember when we lived in St. George that I had chest pains.
Yes, I do remember.
And I think I was mid-40s or something like that. And I thought, I'm way too young to be having chest pains.
Yeah.
And but I think it was related to obesity. Obesity is actually linked to more than 200 different diseases. And I'm not just talking about ticky-tack stuff. This is like cancer. This is like heart disease. This is like diabetes. This is like, these are all things that will take your life.
Yeah.
And so I went to the doctor to find out what's going on. He said my cholesterol was high. I've got high blood pressure. You know what I mean? And, might have had a mild heart attack, which was causing the chest pain and so forth. And I was freaked out about it. You might remember I was freaked out about it. And I used to walk, we lived in a golf course community at that time. And I used to walk around the golf course. And I remember I went to it's St. George. So there's, it's not a big town. So there's, kind of some mountainous areas and some scenic areas. And I remember going to this hill, and I used to go to this hill every night, and I would pray. I'd actually look at the sky, and I'd be like, God, I'm not ready to die. I'm only like 45 years old. You know what I mean? I don't know what to do about this. And so I went to the doctor, and he told me to stop eating cheese. And it's related to the cholesterol thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's why he said that. But to be honest, I thought to myself, okay, you know what? There's got to be some other answer here because I'm not giving up cheese. But
no way. Cheese is very delicious.
Well, and I'm not going to doubt the medical advice. There's probably something there about cheese and cholesterol and so forth. But I guess what I thought to myself at that time is, I've got to do something different. And he recommended that I lose weight. You know, I didn't know how to lose weight because it was like it'd never been a big part of my life. I never really thought to myself, I need some weight loss strategy or anything like that. At that age and the condition that I was in, I just felt like anything I did didn't help. Like, you know, walking, exercising, I didn't get any thinner. You know what I mean? A lot of like the problems I were having, you remember the hard belly and all this kind of stuff, it was actually related to inflammation, you know, because the way your body deals with disease is it swells. So it's like my body was trying to tell me something is wrong. And I was having this generalized swelling, you know. Just as an example of that, this bracelet, you probably remember this. My brother, I don't know if the camera can see that, but I sized this bracelet when my brother gave it to me last Christmas, which was about 6 months ago. And that fit my wrist 6 months ago. And I don't know if the camera can see that. But there's like an inch of space in there. There's a pretty big gap. Like I can stick 2 fingers in there. You know what I mean? And so I use that to remind myself, like, there's been a big change. You know? And I don't know. I mean, maybe you have a different opinion. I don't think I had like huge fat wrists. You know, like I didn't have like an inch of fat around my wrist, right? No. So it was like that was all swelling, that was all inflammation. You know what I mean? And so that's sort of to give you an image. That's what my body was like. I was just like swollen. You know, my whole body was just swollen, and it caused problems with everything. You know, you can't move. You know what I mean? It's hard to move. You know, I think young people think to themselves, oh, you know, if you're a little overweight, you just need to go to the gym and hit it hard. You know what I mean? But what maybe you don't think about is like, yeah, but if movement is painful, you know,
in the gym,
if movement is awkward, it's not going to help. I remember it because you're into personal fitness. You even work at a gym. And we've gone to the gym and things like that. And it's very simple things like touching your toes, you know, are hard when you have a beach ball belly because you can't, you're laughing, but it's like, you know, you saw me at the gym and you're literally, I'm like this. It's like, I cannot reach over my belly to touch my toes, you know? And so the point is, you're not going to be able to lose weight in that situation. You have to do something else, right? You have to do something else. So I guess what happened to me is we moved up here to Utah. I was, I just remember like checking the mailbox. There was someone had sent like a flyer or something like this about new weight loss drugs. And I'd seen commercials on TV. I'd seen billboards, and you know, and it's like, there's been so much interest. There's been a lot of interest in weight loss for a long time. And there's been a lot of stuff, a lot of programs out there that, I don't know, I don't want to say they didn't work, but I always thought they didn't work, you know? And so I just thought that, oh, this is just another thing. It's not really going to work, you know? And then I started hearing more and more about other people coming out and saying there's these breakthrough, that's why we called the company Breakthrough Medical. There's these breakthrough weight loss drugs, you know, that actually work, you know? And then people like Oprah started talking about it, and Kelly Clarkson. And I know that these are Hollywood celebrity type people and they do crazy diets all the time. So you're thinking maybe it's something like that. But then like Dr. Oz comes out and he's talking about it, right? So you're getting like sort of all of this testimony or this validation that there's really something interesting happening here. You know what I mean? And so I saw a flyer in the mail and I thought, maybe I'll just try it. Maybe I'll just try it. And so I talked to Sherilyn about it. She also wanted to lose some weight. And we agreed, well, why don't we do it together? You know? And I think we're going to do a whole show on kind of our experience of doing this together as a couple, because I think that's the way to do it. Just like you need like a workout buddy to get you to go to the gym. I think you need a weight loss buddy. You know what I mean? Because it's pretty easy to do with these breakthrough medications, but there's still challenges. There's still issues, right? And so it's helpful to have someone to talk to about it. It's helpful to have someone that kind of says, you know, I'm on the journey with you. We're going to do it together. And so, you know, it also sort of created this little competitive thing. You know, your mom, she's kind of competitive. So she wanted to beat me, you know, and I have to admit she's lost more weight than I have. But like we got through that together. So I decided to go try it, and I didn't know what to expect. I'm the kind of person that faints when I see blood. You know, I don't like needles. I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of mental anxiety that when someone pulls out a needle, I just, you know, it's like I kind of freak out a little bit. I don't want that. So when I heard that you had to do these injections into your stomach, I was scared about that. So I wanted someone to help me with that. So we went to a nurse, and that made me feel better. Though they know what they're doing and so forth. And so for a while, we would go to a clinic, and we would have the nurse do the injections for us, and I would, I'd have to do, I don't know, like look out the window. Well, you know what I mean, or count to 10 or something And then then I realized, like, the needles are they're just like these insulin needles. They're really short, and they just barely go under the skin. They don't penetrate your muscle or anything like that. So they don't really hurt. And then the other thing is you inject them into your belly where you have, for me, I have a lot of fat. So you inject it into the fat where there's not a lot of nerve endings. There's not a lot of feeling there anyway. So it didn't hurt. So we eventually started doing the injections ourselves. Right? And then what happened to me was in the first month, I don't feel like if I stood on the scale, I weighed the same amount. I didn't lose. I was at 216 pounds. And I told you my story before. I got up to 200, and I was just disgusted with myself.
Yeah.
And about 7-8 months ago, I was 216 pounds. And you remember we went to Daytona Beach.
Yeah.
And that's the same week that I started doing the injections. So that's the picture, and I guess we'll bring it up on the video. But that's the picture I show to people. It's like, this is what I looked like 7 months ago.
Yeah.
And my wrist was bigger than this bracelet.
Yeah.
Big, round belly, short person, right? So it's like, and you could see the weight in my face and my chin and everything, or the chins, right? Because I was, I was bigger. And, the clothes didn't fit very well. You had to wear I had to wear these shirts that you don't want to tuck them in. I think men probably relate to this, but it's like a lot of men get bellies, and it's like you don't want to tuck your shirt in because it makes the belly look bigger.
Yeah.
Right? So then you leave your shirt untucked like this, but then it looks like you're wearing a sheet or a tent or so. You know what I mean? It just doesn't look. You don't have good fashion options. And I'm all about
all about the trends.
all about the fashions. So Daytona Beach was the first week we started taking it, and I didn't notice my weight drop. But what I did notice is that my clothes fit differently, even after 1 month. And I thought to myself, how is this possible? Right? It's like I haven't lost any weight, but my clothes feel looser. And it's related again to that inflammation. The first thing that happens is the swelling starts to go down because you're addressing a medical issue and you don't even realize it. You know what I mean? Your body's saying there's a medical issue here, right? And what these medications do, they're called GLP-1s, and what they do is they address blood sugar. Right, they were designed for people with diabetes that have trouble making insulin, right, in their bodies, and so these injections help you to boost insulin. And they found out that it also does some other things. It regulates your blood sugar, and it also curbs your appetite, right? And we can talk more about that, about how it actually works. But once I started eliminating sugar from my blood by using these injections, the inflammation went down. And then my weight started to drop. So in month 2 and in month 3, then that's when I started to notice I actually started losing a lot of weight, right? So remember my first story about when we were getting divorced, and I went on a no-sugar diet, and I lost like 30, 40 pounds without any injections, without any medications at that time, right? And now, fast forward 10, 12 years, similar situation, using an injection to reduce my blood sugar, the weight goes down. So there's a connection here, right? It's like we live in a society where we are being poisoned by too much sugar in our food supply, and there's a whole history about that, and we can talk about that too. And for people that are interested, if you go on Netflix, there's like documentaries called like Food Inc. and Super Size Me and things like that. This is a known issue that, from the 1970s, that we had a spike in diabetes and heart disease and all these kind of things. And it's related to the changes in the food supply, but specifically around putting more sugar into our diets. So it's interesting. Take injections, lower my blood sugar, right? Reduce some of these things that remember I said I was, having chest pains and so forth. And the doctor said you have high cholesterol, high blood pressure, you need to lose weight. So I start losing weight by lowering my blood sugar. Guess what? Blood pressure goes down, cholesterol goes down. So it's like all of these diseases that are linked to obesity, many of them can be reversed by addressing the blood sugar issue. Isn't that interesting,
That
right?
is interesting,
So it's like, I think a lot of people think, oh, you're trying to lose weight. Oh, you must be so vain, because that's what Hollywood celebrities do, is that they're just always
Yeah.
on some crazy diet because they're trying to look like Barbie dolls or
Yeah.
something. And there's some aspect, and that's a motivation for some people, but honestly, like, this is about disease.
Yeah.
This is about, like, how do you extend your life another 10 or 20 years
Yeah.
so that when you are having a sports day with your nieces and nephews, that you could actually run up and down the field and have, and I'm not saying you're going to win, but, but at least you can compete, and you can feel
Yeah.
healthy, and you can feel good about that, and you don't feel like you're going to literally have a heart attack on the field. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it sounds scary, disease, death, all that kind of thing. But I mean, that's actually what we're talking about here. I mean, this is a breakthrough. There is a way for people to extend their life,
Yeah.
another 10 or 20 years. My
Yeah.
my dad, I don't think you knew him very well, and Sherilyn's dad, and she'll probably share that story later in a different episode. But our fathers were very heavy,
Yeah.
right? And my dad died of Alzheimer's, right? Which in a way is kind of diabetes type 3. You've heard of type 1,
Yeah,
type
type
2, and people sometimes refer to Alzheimer's as diabetes type
Yeah.
3 because it's
all
all
about
related
diet too, right?
it's related to sugar poisoning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Cancer feeds off of sugar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in the last 50 years, in American society anyway, we've been overdosing on sugar, and we're getting all of these medical conditions, all of these life-threatening situations, right? That my own parent, my dad died from, her dad died from. I think many people in the audience will relate, for that generation,
Yeah.
right? They struggled with obesity, and they died from heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, things like that. So this is very exciting because there's a thought we can actually reverse some of these diseases. Maybe I don't have to die of one of
Yeah.
these diseases. To be quite honest with you, I've always worried about that because my dad was very heavy. From the time I was a child, he was a college professor, had a desk job, lived in the Midwest,
Yeah.
meaning that he wasn't eating the Mediterranean diet or,
Yeah.
or the South Beach diet or anything like
Yeah.
that, right? And he was very heavy. And I remember as a kid, that was strange. And maybe sometime we'll have some of my siblings on the podcast, and they can share their experiences. But I remember, like, my dad's obesity was part of our family story, if that kind of makes sense. It became kind of part of our family culture,
Yeah,
right?
affected you.
And so there were things like, he's passed away, but I don't mean to embarrass him or anything. But it's like he would need help getting dressed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I remember that at one point, he was probably about the same age that I am now. And he probably went through a similar kind of experience where he thought, oh my gosh, this is kind of my last chance to turn this obesity thing around because I'm only getting older, right? So I
Yeah.
remember he started running and swimming, and I grew up in a family of boys, so he'd play basketball with us and so forth. And he was kind of a silly personality. I don't know if you realize that about him. Because you didn't know him until he was much older. But he liked to, play silly games with us. So, like, he wanted to exercise. So what he would do is he would get the kids to come outside with him and go to the corner of the street, and then he'd have a foot race with us. But because he knew he was going to lose,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't really a race. So he kind of did like this, kind of zombie chase kind of thing where he was the monster and he would chase us.
Yeah.
And because we were kids, we thought that was fun.
Yeah.
But what we didn't realize is that he needed something to chase after
Yeah.
to get him to exercise because it was difficult for him to move.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
needed some kind of objective like that to do that. And unfortunately, he tried so many ways to exercise, did not lose any weight. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that plagued him his whole life. And then he eventually died of Alzheimer's. But I personally believe that the cause of all that was the blood, it was the sugar that was causing the obesity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what I believe.
Yeah.
So why did I tell you all that? Do you remember what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah. The question was, how did you get into weight loss?
Oh, yeah, that was kind of a long answer to how did I get into weight loss. So then I started taking the drugs, and I realized I was able to lose. It's been about 7 months since I've been taking it, and I've lost about 35 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive, yeah.
So I was like 216, and so now I'm down to like 180, I think. And I'd like to get to about 165, 170 is I think about where I should be. And the thing the reason this is a breakthrough is that although I've lost 30 or 40 pounds in the past, this time I didn't have to get divorced to do it. I didn't get divorced. I didn't get divorced the first time. But that was kind of what was behind the weight loss the first time around. But the common link between the two of them was the sugar, right?
Yeah.
And so if people are thinking to themselves, I relate to this story. I relate to getting winded walking upstairs. I relate to being 50 years old and I can't run on the field with my nieces and nephews anymore. Or I had a parent that died from an obesity-linked disease. And if you're thinking about weight loss, I would encourage people to start thinking about these breakthrough solutions. Right now, there's other ways to do it. Diet is good. Exercise is good.
Yeah.
Getting proper amount of sleep. There's a lot of factors here. But for me, I think that if you're in your 50s and you've noticed a slowdown in your health and your body and you feel stuck, just like nothing's working, I think you should try these solutions, right? And it's been working for me. The nice thing about it though is that it kind of kicks off this virtuous cycle. Where it's like, remember I said it was hard to move? It's like I didn't want to go to the gym because it actually hurts to move.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing that you can't reach over your belly and touch your toes. You look terrible in your workout clothes, And so that's sort of this negative cycle where you get all this negative attention. And so you just, but once you actually start to reverse that, right? And it's like, the thing about the inflammation is that once the inflammation went down, I could move my wrist again without pain, right? It's like the joints move again. And so then it's like, oh, I actually like moving,
Yeah.
So it's like, I like going to the gym. I have more energy. I have more mobility.
Yeah.
And then once you start to get because, you're into fitness, but once you start going to the gym, you get, those endorphins and you kind of build this habit and it's like, it actually feels good. So like, I know this isn't a big deal for your age, but I'm 51. And it's like I can run a mile on the treadmill without stopping.
Wow. Yeah.
And I haven't been able to do that for like 15 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the thing is, it wasn't like I had to build up to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was literally just like, okay, let's reduce the inflammation in your body so you can move. And I could immediately run a mile.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the point is, it wasn't really, for me, it wasn't really about like I had poor cardiovascular health or anything like that, or like people worry about muscle loss or whatever. It wasn't, for me, it wasn't like that. It was literally like, get out, and I don't mean to be offensive, but it's like once I got out of that fat suit that was restricting my mobility, it's like all these healthy behaviors came back again.
Yeah.
It's like I wanted to eat healthy.
easily.
I wanted to exercise, and it was fun. And so it kicked off kind of this virtuous cycle where it gets easier and easier and your life gets better and better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know what you think, but I haven't worn this shirt, for years because I couldn't fit into it.
Yeah.
And I've actually got a lot of clothes like this, that I couldn't fit into before, and you probably look at me and think, oh my gosh, your fashion is so bad. You're ridiculous, But for me, it's kind of like I feel good about myself again, because it's like I can wear clothes that I think fit better than, sort of the, the tent to cover the beach ball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like it's getting fun again because it's like, oh,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Exciting.
We'll have to show some pictures of like what my face looked like before, but it's like, I sort of seeing my jawline again. You know what I mean? And like for a man, that's kind of, that's sort of a masculine thing that you want to emphasize.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like I'm starting to feel attractive again. And so it's like my confidence is going up. And so so what I'm getting at is even though people think this is about weight, it's so much more than that. It's about your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like now that I'm feeling, younger and healthier and more attractive, it's like I'm feeling more confident in my job. I feel more confident in my business. It's like I want to go do things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like we're dreaming again. Like we haven't done like family vacations for a long time, and now we're talking about going to Europe,
Yeah.
this summer, because it's like that sense of fun and
Yeah.
adventure and excitement is coming back again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And maybe I shouldn't talk to my baby daughter about this, but it's like, uh, sort of sexuality is returning. You know what I mean? Okay, we won't talk about that one. But the point
Maybe
is,
next episode.
maybe next time we'll do a different episode on that with someone else. But you kind of get the point. It's
Yeah.
like I was sort of, I don't know, like off to is sort of sidelined or something. It's like somehow I like fell off the track of life and was
Yeah.
just kind of stuck there. And then once you get back on, it's like all the things that you associate with being, young, they come back. Now I'm 50. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be 18 again. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's fun to be alive again. I don't know
Yeah,
if,
exactly.
I'm not sure you can relate to it because I don't know if you've felt that stuck in your life. So I think there's an age difference, but you kind of get the point. It's like a lot
Yeah.
of good things are happening just because I made that one decision. Like, even though I'm scared of needles, maybe I'll just look out the window and count to 10. And because of that decision, and my wife supported me in that, and we did it together,
Yeah.
it's like I feel like my life is back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you mentioned that you went through like so many different processes with like semaglutide and how it affected your life now and before. Just for like newcomers, like do you have any tips for like
Yeah.
your journey?
Yeah, so to finish the journey, so I told you like in month 1, the inflammation went down, the clothes started fitting better. Month 2 and 3, I noticed a rapid drop in weight. And for me, that was about 2 pounds a week,
Yeah, and I remember that
Yeah.
you and mom would get nauseous, like
Right.
some side
So
effects.
one of the known side effects with semaglutide is because the way that it works is that your gut sends a protein, sends a signal to your brain through a protein
Yeah.
called GLP-1, and what that tells your brain is that the stomach is full, so turn off the appetite, right? And then it regulates the blood sugar, and then it slows down digestion. So food stays in your stomach
Yeah.
longer than it normally would, which is what you feel full. So you just
Yeah.
don't. It's not like the problem with diets is that most people say they're kind of like, oh, I gotta have a cookie because I'm so hungry. You know what I mean? But you don't feel any of that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's just like your body's just like feeling good,
more,
feeling.
yeah.
It's like I don't need to eat anymore. I'm just happy, content. So you don't have these hunger cravings, right?
Yeah.
Oprah did a special on it. She calls it food noise. Where it's like you just have this constant signal where it's just
Yeah.
like I just have the munchies. I got to eat. And some people have that, and so that gets turned off. So you just and then you realize how much time you actually spend eating because
Yeah.
when you don't eat, then you're kind of like, okay, I gotta wait like 40 minutes for everyone else to eat because
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Because it's like
Yeah.
you just don't feel hungry,
Yeah.
So and then like in months 4, 5, 6, I felt like I hit a plateau. So with semaglutide, you can lose 20% of your body weight over a year, right?
Yeah.
I think I only lost 11, 12%, something like that. And then I hit a plateau.
Yeah.
And that's pretty normal actually because your body just sort of gets used to it. And so I decided to switch off of semaglutide. And I had a little bit of nausea like what you're talking about. I had a little bit of sort of like I felt like there was like my stomach was sort of squeezing a
Yeah.
little bit. But for me, I didn't have really too many bad side effects with semaglutide. Now, Charilyn will tell her story, and she really had a difficult time with it. So between my plateau and her nausea, we decided maybe we should try something else. So we found that there's a new drug on the scene now. It's called Tirzepatide, right? And it's pretty new. It's only been approved since November. So that's been 8 months, something like that.
Yeah.
It's more expensive than semaglutide, but it's more effective and it has fewer side effects. So we both switched over to Tirzepatide about 2 months ago, and she can tell her version of the story. But for me, 0 side effects.
Oh,
been
good.
totally effective. I feel like I've started to lose weight again because I kind of got to a plateau,
Yeah.
and now I'm dropping down a little bit more. Now you want to be careful because, and all of this is supervised by a medical doctor, because you have to have a prescription to get access to the drugs. But when you're on the drugs, you also want some supervision because one of the reasons that we found out
Yeah.
that we were so nauseated by the semaglutide is we were taking
Yeah.
the wrong amount.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you think about any other kind of drug like Tylenol or NyQuil or something like that, and you're like, I don't understand why I'm sleepy. Well, if you
Yeah.
take too much NyQuil, it's it's an
Yeah.
overdose. It's going to be dangerous. And
Yeah.
so we had the same situation. We were taking too little. We were taking too much because I told you at first we were doing it with a nurse, and then we started
Yeah.
doing it on our own.
Uh-huh.
We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we were just sort of guessing. We were just kind of feeling our way through it. So we were taking the wrong dose. We were taking it at the wrong time. All this kind of stuff. And so that was contributing to those symptoms we were having. So if you get supervision from a doctor, that will help definitely. We also learned that semaglutide changes your sense of taste around sugar. Remember, it's all about sugar,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, really?
So you don't crave sugar anymore, but it also tastes different, right? And so if you eat sugary foods, you can eat sugary foods. And some people say semaglutide's great because I can eat donuts all day and not lose weight.
Yeah.
But the reality is your sense of taste changes and you don't like donuts anymore. They don't taste good to you anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can still eat them. You know what I mean? But the point is,
Just like unappealing.
they're just not interesting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so your diet will change. And we also learned, like, if you eat highly processed foods and foods that are high in fat, fatty, saturated foods, greasy, kind of fast
Also
food
not
kind of
good.
stuff, well, it actually contributes to the nausea. So people have complained that some of the side effects are, I have stomach aches, I have diarrhea, I feel constipated. That's actually related to they're still eating junk food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And people have questions like, well, am I going to be on this drug the rest of my life? Now remember, this drug was designed for people with diabetes
Yeah.
that need to have a boost of insulin because
Yeah.
their pancreas isn't making insulin properly anymore. And so why would you tell somebody that's a diabetic has to take insulin, you only have to take this 3 months?
Yeah.
Or someone with cancer or something like that. You only have to worry about your cancer for 3 months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is a long-term situation. And so the drugs were designed to be something that was a long-term solution. But, and this is my theory, if it's actually related to sugar, right, you can wean yourself off of the drugs.
Yeah.
Many people reduce their dosage or they spread out the time between the doses they take when they get to their target weight because you can lose too much weight.
Yeah.
Right? But if you slow it down, you spread it out. And then the other thing you do is if you change your diet and you get back into exercise, you will change your situation, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people worry that, these things are a scam because as soon as you stop taking them, you gain all the weight back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it sort of makes sense, right? It's like you live in this toxic food environment,
Yeah.
right? Then you take a drug that helps you get out of that, and then you stop taking the drug and you didn't change anything else and you go right back
Yeah.
into the toxic. Well, of course.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to get it. Because remember, I said that in my, when I was around 38, I was heavy and I lost the weight,
Yeah.
gained it back.
Yeah.
Even heavier this time. I went for 216. I was even 15 pounds heavier.
Yeah.
So I started doing it. So if you stop taking the drug, which I did, I stopped taking it for about 3 weeks. I did
Yeah.
notice some of the food cravings come back. Some of the things about inflammation and things come back.
Yeah.
But it's because I'm still on this journey of transitioning my diet away from highly processed food.
Yeah.
High fructose corn syrup. All the poisonous things that are in our food supply. And you really do need to kind of change your lifestyle and change your diet. So we recommend that if people do want to do this, don't be thinking about this for like a 1 month or a 3 month kind of thing. Like, I've got to fit into a dress for a wedding,
Yeah.
or something like that. You really should be thinking more like, I should be thinking about this for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, something
Yeah.
like that, to give yourself enough time. You'll get to your target
Yeah.
weight in about 6 months.
Yeah.
But you need to give yourself another year and a half to change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where we're at right now. So I'm in month 7, and I'd like to get a little bit lean, thinner. but at some point, it's like, I don't want to weigh 130 pounds. When I graduated high school, I was 135. I don't want to go back to that. That's not what I'm trying
What
to
is
do.
your target weight?
So my target weight is probably around 160, 165.
160.
I think
And
that's,
you're, what are you, 180 right now?
I'm 180.
So you're like 20
Yeah.
pounds.
Yeah. So 15, 20 pounds, right? But, and maybe you'll see if we put up some pictures on the video, but it's like my belly has like, you know, has really thinned out.
it's really
and, you know, so,
noticeable.
yeah. And it's like, so one thing that people worry about is like, well, am I going to lose bone? Am I going to lose muscle? It's like, am I going to wither away? Am I going to be one of those, what are they called on the Little Mermaid, those little creatures? You know what I'm talking about? It's like, the witch turns them
I know
into
what you're talking about. I
these
don't know the
little
name,
sea
though.
creatures, and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
and like people have this image, like they're going to take this drug and they're somehow going to degenerate into this, you know,
Yeah, like
this
sickly.
little sea foam creature,
Yeah.
whatever, you know. And the answer to that is, well, that can happen if you allow it to,
Yeah.
right? But it's not a foregone conclusion that that's going to happen, right? So the thing that people need to understand about weight loss and the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
You've heard the name Ozempic, probably. So
Yeah.
Ozempic is the brand name for semaglutide, and that's for diabetes.
Yeah.
And then they made another version of it, still semaglutide, called Wegovy, and that's for weight loss. And the thing that's very exciting about this is that they've got FDA approval to treat serious diseases like diabetes. And they've also shown that Wegovy, which is the weight loss one, reduces people's risk of cardiovascular disease, right? So that's what I was talking about, right? 200 diseases that are linked to the obesity.
Yeah.
And so they're now authorized by the FDA to say, in clinical trials, we have shown that we reduce people's risk of getting these diseases if they reduce their weight using these drugs,
Yeah.
right? So that should be a reason to do it right there. But so
Yeah.
one of the things that people talk about in the news and the gossip, the celebrity gossip and stuff, is that this thing called Ozempic face.
Yeah.
So I remember I told you, like, you know, the inflammation goes down and every part of your body starts to shrink down. It's like this bracelet doesn't fit anymore. You know, I haven't worn my wedding ring for a long time because my fingers were too fat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I bet I could slip that on again and it would fit. And so what happens is people lose weight in their face too. And then what people worry about is that around their eyes and their cheekbones, that this can kind of hollow out a little bit, because you don't just lose weight on your belly.
Yeah.
You lose weight everywhere on your body, right? And so people call it Ozempic face, because when people start this, you know, starts to hollow out their face a little bit, that is what happens when you lose weight. That does not happen. That's not what happens when you take Ozempic.
Yeah.
You know, but they call it that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the problem with that is that then people think to themselves, oh, there's all these terrible symptoms and problems related to these drugs. When in reality, what they're talking about is when you lose a lot of weight, your body will change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just
And
natural.
so, but if you know that, then you can prepare for it. So the question about like bone loss or muscle loss or things like that, hair loss is one of the symptoms, you know, that's been reported, right?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, how, this sounds scary, right? Tiny percentage of people report these problems.
Yeah.
Right? Even for nausea, I think it's
Yeah.
like, you know, 15%. But for serious things, there are some known side effects, you know, like pancreatitis, things like this.
Yeah.
This is for a fraction of 1% of the people that have these kind of issues.
Yeah.
So for most people, you're going to be fine. But what you need to remember is that when you stop eating, which is what we're talking about here, right? You stop eating, your body starts to burn fuel. It takes it from the fat. It takes it from the muscle. It takes it from every part of your body, and your body goes from a supersized state to a mini-me state. It just shrinks down the whole body, right?
Yeah, really fast,
So
too.
you need to pay attention to the composition of your body, how much fat you have, how much muscle you have, how much bone you have, how much water you have. We recommend you do body scans that do composition analysis so you can know, you know, so Cheryl and I recently did one. And I did lose a little bit of muscle in the last 7 months,
Yeah.
but not very much. And most of the loss, weight loss, was actually fat. So that's great news, right? So for me, it's like, okay, yeah, my arms have kind of, you know, I don't have as much bulk on my arms, and maybe
Yeah.
men worry about that. Maybe they're like, well, I don't want to be a stick figure or something like
Yeah.
that. But you can build that muscle back.
Yeah.
Right? You just have to do it intentionally, right? So what I want people to remember is that if you're worried about some of these things like Ozempic face or hair loss or muscle loss or something like that, that is a result of not getting nutrients, which makes sense, right? Because you stopped eating.
Yeah.
So you're not only not getting the sugar, which you don't want, but you're also not getting the nutrients that you need to grow your hair and to build your muscles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So one of the tricks about this is you've got to kind of figure out how to eat the right stuff at the right time, even though you don't feel hungry.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So you kind of need like this new habit of, instead of munching on cookies and crackers and potato chips, you kind of need to, start thinking about vitamin
Yeah.
supplements or munching on, raw fruits and veggies or things that will give you the nutrients that you need to keep your body healthy and activated.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been talking a lot about like diet and how it plays into semaglutide and everything. Just like how, like, you said that before you were kind of eating like unhealthily.
Yeah.
You'd eat like snack on crackers and cookies. And how do you think it compares like how you eat now?
So what's interesting is that when you lower the sugar in your body, stuff that you don't normally think of as tasting sweet tastes sweet. So for example, carrots taste sweet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like maybe you wouldn't have thought about that before, But it's like, and one thing that just sort of blows my mind is if you eat nutrient-dense food, you don't need a whole lot of volume.
Yeah.
And I think that, especially in America, you've been to restaurants and like, they bring out the American size special and it's like the plate is this big, and
Yeah.
it's, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like they're feeding us like cattle, you know what I mean? And you've probably gone to other countries. You went with us to Japan and they bring out little plates like this and the dishes are this big.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is you eat that little piece of fish or whatever it is, and it's satisfying and you feel full
Yeah.
off of that little piece instead of this huge portion where
Yeah.
you eat all that and you still feel hungry. And part of the reason you still feel hungry is because they're kind of cheating and they're flavoring the food in a way
Yeah.
to keep your appetite going, right? So it's a big diabolical game.
Well, what foods would you like recommend to?
So raw fruits and vegetables, right? Now fruit does have sugar in it, so maybe people are thinking, oh, well, you can't have the sugar. The sugar in the fruit is natural compared to processed. And then the other thing is that you need to eat the fruit, not just the juice.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want the fiber in the fruit, because
the
the fiber
vitamins.
is also, there's, and it's interesting, I've read some articles recently from dietitians and doctors that basically say, you can, GLP-1s, remember that's semaglutide, tirzepatide, that's a GIP-1. But these synthetic hormones, these are, they're mimicking natural hormones, and you can get this naturally in your diet.
Yeah.
Right? So there is an argument out there that says, well, why take these drugs at all? Because you can produce the same effect with your diet. The difference, though, is like, can you really eat a truck full of broccoli? You know what I mean? To get the amount of nutrients that you need. Does that make sense? Can you really, So people are going to have to decide. But diet's an important part of it. And if you're interested in eating food that will help produce GLP-1s naturally so that maybe you can eventually wean off the drug after 18 months, if that's what you want to do, then you need food high in fiber. Oats specifically, have been shown to sort of boost that GLP-1 production in your body. All the stuff that, like, if people know about diets, like, the Mediterranean diet, the keto, these kind of things, these are all shown to be effective to do these kind of things. So there's, there's superfoods like broccoli and spinach and kale and blueberries and, and all of those things are good. So, but if you're someone that lives a diet of cookies and crackers and, cheese, I do love cheese.
Cheese is
I made
really
fun of
good.
that doctor, but
Maybe you were
cheese
right.
maybe it's a problem. No, I'll eat cheese, but there will be a transition, right? Like if you've just sort of accepted the default American diet of like Cocoa Puffs and you know what I mean, you will eventually. It's my prediction. You will eventually die of diabetes or some similar disease like that. So we really need to get back to whole fruits and vegetables, whole grains, high fiber foods, on the diet side. And then on the exercise side, this is something that probably should be said. Exercise does not actually help you lose weight.
Yeah,
right?
I've heard that before.
You know what I mean? Because weight is about the amount of calories that come in, right? So if you're eating a bunch of empty calories, you will never be able to exercise enough, especially if you're 50 years old.
Yeah.
You'll never be able to exercise enough to burn off all of that excess calories that have no nutrients in them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So people are worried that, oh, if I take semaglutide, my hair is going to fall out because I don't get enough nutrients. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? There are no nutrients in Cocoa Puffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's like you got to solve that problem no matter what, you know? But exercise will help you maintain your weight. It'll help with
Gain
like
muscle.
you'll gain muscle. You'll gain bone mass, which is important
Yeah.
as you get older. You know, it'll help with cardiovascular fitness. You know, aerobic, that kind of thing. But exercise as a weight loss strategy, it's insufficient. You know what I mean? You've got to do more than that. Weight loss is really more about diet than exercise. Right? So if you do, in my opinion, sort of the killer combo, which is you do a good diet, you do have, good exercise regimen, and if you need it, a little boost of GLP-1s, that's the winning combination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of sounds like with the diet and exercise and everything, like a lot of self-discipline. So like what was your experience with self-discipline? Was it hard? Was it?
So that's an interesting debate, and I'm glad you brought that up. And maybe it's your personality, maybe it's your age. There is a school of thought that is favored by the young that if you are fat, that means you are lazy. You know what I mean? That if you are having a weight problem, it's really because you just don't have the self-discipline or the self-will, or you just don't have good habits, or you're just not educated or something, right? And I think, that's not entirely true. And my experience has been that when I was younger, I did exercise frequently, but it wasn't a matter of discipline. I did it because it was fun. You know what I mean? Because it was like I wanted to be active. I wanted to hang out with my sports teams. You know what I mean? It's like that was my group. That was what we did. That was just the age. You just kind of run around. You had a bunch of energy, And people with children will know that, children just seem to have this unlimited amount of energy, and they run around crazy all day. And then at the end of the day, they just pop, they fall over and they just, sleep however they fall. And then they pop right back up and then they do it again,
Yeah.
And so it's really about age. And then when you get older and you realize you don't have that reserve of energy anymore, then it's like actually the fun of sports and exercise kind of goes down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you just can't engage at the same level anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so for me, I don't really think that self-will is really an effective strategy either. And the reason for that, it works for young people, but to be honest, when I was young, I didn't have a problem, but it wasn't because I had all this great self-will.
Yeah.
It's because I was young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then when I got older, and there are people my age, there's a lot of 50-year-old men that they go to the gym and they build they have bodybuilder bodies, and and they're hitting it really hard. You think about how much time and effort that is their life, that they have to do that to maintain that. You know what I mean? And for me, I didn't want that. So am I lazy because I don't want to be a bodybuilder? I don't think so. So for the self-will part of it, definitely a factor. You do need to have some discipline about your diet. You do need to have some discipline about exercise. That's true. My personal opinion is that strategy is not going to work for very many people once they get to their 50s. There will be a few that will push through,
Yeah.
But I don't think, generally speaking, you think about, in America, 7 out of 10 people are overweight, and 4 of them are obese, which means they are really overweight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be helpful to go to that population of people and say, you're fat and lazy and you need to just get after it and exercise, demonstrate some discipline. I mean, honestly, it's kind of, you've heard of fat shaming. There are so many people out there that are struggling with their weight, and they are just exasperated. They are frustrated because they're getting shamed by this self-will message.
Yeah.
The reason you have this obesity problem is because you suck. You know what I mean? And and I think that that's very discouraging for them, So do people need self-will? Yes, they do. Do they also need something that's going to get them unstuck? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because your question about self-will, it's like, let's use an analogy or a metaphor. Let's say that I drive off the road and I get my car gets stuck in the mud and the wheels spin,
Yeah.
you know? And then someone's driving by and they yell out, you know, press the gas, dummy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's sort of what it feels like, right? It's
Yeah.
you're stuck on the side of the road, your wheels are spinning, you're not making any progress, and everyone that's driving by is just like, well, you're an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't you know how to drive? You just press the gas and you go. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the same. That's sort of the same way we treat this problem. It's just like, oh, you're overweight.
That's
Go
a
to
you
the
problem.
gym. That sounds like a you problem. If you just went to the gym, if you just ate a better diet, you know what I mean? But the thing that's sort of missing from all this is like, why is it that Americans are obese? You know?
Yeah.
And other people in other countries are not. You're kind of like, there's got to be something different here.
Yeah.
And is it because Americans are lazy? They have no self-will, so self-discipline. You know, is it that when you go to other countries where obesity is not an issue?
Yeah.
You know, is it because all those people are like they're really hitting the gym every day? No, that's not what you see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, self-will, that's a factor. But I would personally put your self-will into decisions about like, I'm going to make the decision to try GLP-1s. Because that's sort of a self-will kind of thing too.
Yeah.
Because there will be some challenges, right? If you try semaglutide, some people, about 15% have nausea. Do you want to have nausea
Yeah.
at the gym? Or do you want to have nausea by taking this drug?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, Sherilyn said to me the other day, pick your hard. You know what I mean? It's like no matter
Yeah,
what
that's
you
good.
do, there's going to be something hard about that approach.
Yeah.
And you have to decide, do you have the self-will and the self-discipline to push through that hard thing? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I could turn the argument around and say, you got nausea from semaglutide? What a loser. You just need more self-will. You just need more, you know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like we can't really judge people that way.
Yeah.
But I think what we can do is we can empathize and we can help them and we can support them. That's why we started this whole business in the first place. It's like, you know, it really hit me on a very personal level when my dad died. And when I started to realize that it was related to obesity and it was related to the American diet. And you look around and there are so many people that are struggling with this problem, right? There's no denying that Americans, we have an obesity epidemic in America, you know, and are we just going to do nothing about it? Are we just going to, you know what I mean? So that's really kind of our motivation to do it. So we're trying to do something different. There are a lot of providers that are offering access to these drugs. We're certainly not unique in that way, but we're trying to emphasize, you know, community, a multi-pronged approach, you know, to bring in the diet and the exercise, like what you talk about. But we think one of the really important parts is to have a weight loss buddy, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that next time. But that's why we kind of did this whole weight loss fight club podcast idea, because I think for many people, obesity is the invisible fight.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And everybody's in it. You know, and you're young and you're thin. You're in it. Maybe you don't realize it. If you live in America, you eat American food, you live the American lifestyle, you are in the American weight loss fight club. You know what I mean? Maybe you won't realize it for 10 or 20 years. You know what I mean? But you're in it. And so I feel like this is our little way of sort of, you know, giving back. You know, if people are struggling with like financial situations or whatever, and they're like, oh, I really need this, but I can't afford it. Come talk to us. You know what I mean? It's like, because, money's part of it here, but it's like, we really think this is our way to give back and to help people, right? Because I know that losing weight has changed my life. This is my second time around. So I've got a second confirmation or second witness here that this really does work. It really does help, you know? And I just think, you know, if you're thinking to yourselves, you know, I want to get more out of my life. I want to live longer. I want to enjoy my relationships more.
Yeah.
You've got to improve your health. And everyone sort of knows that, right? But what maybe they don't realize is that the single most important thing you can do to improve your health is to lose weight.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because gaining weight makes everything worse.
Yeah.
And losing weight makes everything better. Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to just how we're talking about like body shaming, it kind of made me think about like how body positive was like a trend, and, like a fad.
Yeah.
Do you think that like breakthrough medical weight loss is going to be the next trend, or
Well, I don't know if breakthrough medical will be the next trend, but I do think there is a trend happening all around us right now with these weight loss medications, and they truly are remarkable. And maybe something people don't realize is that it's not like these drugs were invented yesterday. It's like they're not brand new. I mean, it's like these drugs have actually been around for 20 years.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of research into this, the effects, the benefits, the side effects. It's actually well known. But the thing that's changed is that they've made a link now, because remember, these drugs were originally developed to help with diabetes and things like that. But
Yeah.
they've now realized, after they've done their studies, right, that it actually helps with weight loss as well.
Yeah.
And they realize they can retarget these existing drugs to weight loss,
Yeah.
which helps with a whole bunch of other things, right?
Yeah.
You know, Wegovy is now running national commercials saying that the FDA has approved the use of Wegovy to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease, which means
Yeah.
you're going to reduce the likelihood you're going to have a stroke or a heart attack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
amazing, yeah.
And it's amazing,
Yeah.
right? And now they're saying this very openly and very publicly, and with the endorsement of the FDA, you know. And now there's a whole bunch of money flying around, investment
Yeah.
money. You know, we've got two big companies. Novo Nordisk is a Danish company that makes Ozempic and Wegovy. We've got Eli Lilly. It's an American company. They make Tirzepatide, which goes
Yeah.
into, you know, they labeled it as Mounjaro and Zepbound are their versions. And so there's just a whole lot of money flying around. And then we're getting like celebrity endorsements and then like public figures that have medical backgrounds like Dr. Oz and so
Yeah.
forth are coming out and saying this is the real deal. You know what I mean? So there's just a lot of attention. And so has it become a fad?
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely a lot of excitement about it. And you could argue that it's a fad. But this industry is predicted to go to $130 billion by 2030. Right, for this alone.
Yeah.
Tirzepatide is 30 billion of that alone, right?
wow.
Which is the
Yeah.
drug I mentioned that I personally have had a better experience with. You know, less nausea, more effective.
Yeah.
Did not plateau. You know, so they're predicting 30 billion alone just for that.
Yeah.
And so here's the question: is this a fad? Is it going to go away? Is it going to be sort of like, I don't know if you're old enough to remember infomercials where they get like, you know, celebrities like Suzanne Summers, and they had like this little spring thing that she'd put between her knees, and she'd wear like a leotard, and she'd be like, you know, I'm doing my whatever. I can't remember what it's called. You know,
Yeah.
that was a fad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like somebody's probably got that in their garage somewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Collecting
I
dust.
don't think that we're going to see semaglutide or tirzepatide on the shelf in a garage the same way
Yeah.
we're going to see something like that. I don't think people are going to be like, well, that was
Yeah.
a big fad.
Yeah.
And the reason is, until we solve the source of the obesity epidemic, weight management is going to be big business in America. You know what I mean? Because everyone needs it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing that's interesting about these new solutions, though, is that they seem to be maybe they're the answer, in the sense they've been more effective than anything else that's been tried before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole thing that started all this was that the government decided to start defining the food pyramid for
Yeah.
Americans, right? So they started doing all these studies on nutrition and so forth in the 60s and 70s, and they released the food pyramid.
Yeah.
And by the way, Jell-O is not a food group. I know you think that it is, but it's actually not on the pyramid if you look at
Dang
it.
it.
But what happened is that through, you know, studies and so forth, they decided that fat in food was bad, right? So they regulated it, and they forced the food manufacturing companies to remove fat. And so we started to get all these low-fat food options. We still have them today. Low-fat milk, low-fat yogurt, low-fat, you know, or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
The problem is when you take the fat, which, by the way, fat is not necessarily bad. There's
Yeah.
good food, you know, and
Yeah.
you're studying nutrition, so you know that, you know, you want good fats like you find like in avocados
Yeah.
and things like that, right? But they took the fat out of the food, and then the problem is it made the food taste like cardboard.
Yeah. They put sugar in it.
So they put sugar
Yeah.
in it to make it taste better. The problem, though, is that the sugar was too expensive. So then they did some more research and some more experiments, and they modified the sugar, and they came up with high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
It was very inexpensive and it was very sweet.
Yeah.
And so they started putting it in everything. And then as soon as that happened, obesity goes up like a hockey stick.
Yeah.
And then when obesity went up, diabetes goes up, heart disease goes up, all these other problems, right? In the 1980s, I know you like 80s music, but you probably don't know any 80s commercials. There was a product in the 80s called I Can't Believe It's Not Butter.
Oh, I think
You probably heard of that
I
before,
think I
right?
knew
And
that,
it was margarine, which is fake butter. But they invented this product because they thought that the fat in butter was bad for you. And so they created this product called I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, right? And then the big joke for my generation is I can't believe that I'm eating this crap. You know what I mean? Because it's not it's clearly not butter.
Yeah.
You know, it actually is worse for you than the butter, you know. So that's kind of where it all started. That's the situation that we're in today.
Yeah.
I do think that there's some positive trends happening in our society. I do think people are becoming more health conscious. Like when I was your age, yoga was not a thing in this
Yeah, it's
country.
becoming very
You know what I
popular.
mean? So there's a lot of positive health trends. I'm very encouraged by that. You know, anything related to like, you know, juicing and raw food and you know, yoga and things, very exciting. But we still have a long way to go as a society before we solve this problem.
Yeah, that's time. But thank you so much for sharing your story, and tune in next week for the next episode.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to
Yes,
interview
of
me.
course.
You made it
Thank you.
fun. Thank
Yes,
you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.